This episode is brought to you by Vinitaly International Academy, the toughest Italian wine program. 1,000 candidates have produced 262 Italian wine ambassadors to date. Next courses in Hong Kong, Russia, New York, and Verona. Think you make the cut? Apply now at vinitalyinternational.com.
Welcome to this special Italian wine podcast broadcast. This episode is a recording off Clubhouse, the popular drop-in audio chat. This Clubhouse session was taken from the Wine Business Club and Italian Wine Club. Listen in as wine lovers and experts alike engage in some great conversation on a range of topics in wine. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinepodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. And remember to subscribe and rate our show wherever you tune in.
Okay, here we go. I am back. My name is Stevie Kim. Hello, everybody. Ciao, ragazzi. I'm back from Paris last night. I actually decided to take a train for the first time. It's for the first time I've taken a train from Milan to Paris. It takes about 7 hours, and it is absolutely fantastic. I highly recommend it if anyone would like to try. Ciao, Julie. Ciao.
Ciao,
Hello.
buonasera.
Hello, how are you? Ciao Amanda, welcome.
I'm doing well. How are you?
Great. Buonasera a tutti. So, welcome everybody. This is the Italian Wine Club at Clubhouse, and it is a series that's called Ambassador's Corner. Today, it's more like a fireside chat, as you know, with the favorite producers chosen by the Italian wine ambassadors. We have here on stage Laika, a Clubhouse manager, of course, and Joy, our Italian wine podcast producer, because these rooms do get replayed on the Italian Wine Podcast. So Laika, this is our 30th episode for the Ambassador's Corner, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And who's on next? Who's on next week?
All right, so we're going to have next week, which is actually your birthday. We'll have Ashley Howell. She's going to interview.
We
have to say
yes. That. Okay, thank you for that. Thank you for the reminder.
And so Ashley is going to interview Pierluca Proietti from Abbianova. So yeah, that's for next week.
Okay, fantastic. And Joy, ciao Joy, are you on? She's just right next.
I am.
Yes, hi Joy.
Hi.
You weren't expecting that, right?
I really wasn't.
So listen, Joy, can you tell, for those who are unfamiliar, when this episode will be played on the podcast? How does it work in general? Give them the lowdown.
Oh, the lowdown. Essentially, I try and get the Clubhouse that is most recent up the following week. We do have a couple before, so this will be played somewhere in, I think, middle of March, probably the 10th of March. But please don't hold me on that.
Okay, all right, we won't.
Not far ahead in the future, just a couple weeks. So yeah.
So tell us a little bit about the performance of these ambassadors corner, because I'm pretty shocked. Not that the ambassadors aren't good and the producers aren't excellent in terms of the conversation, but I thought, and an hour episode, I thought it would be a little bit challenging for our audience, and instead, surprise, I would almost dare to say that they're the most well-performed episodes. And what is your opinion?
No, it's true. This has been going on for around 9 months. And at the beginning, everybody thought you were nuts.
Yeah, I know. Everybody does. All the time. It was
a great idea because, repurposing the clubhouses just puts it out to everybody. And we've had some incredible... Actually, the most listens goes to Clubhouse. It's 4,000, 5,000 listens after a few weeks.
And it has a long shelf life, right? Because so it goes on for the listens continue. It's not just immediate. So it's a bit like social media, but a little bit long. I think outstanding. I would say.
Clubhouse has also contributed to overall listens because we're almost at 2 million listens.
Oh my God. When is that going to happen?
Well, I mean, obviously you and I have bets. that my number scale doesn't really work, but I am going to bet that 2 million in the next.
So this is very exciting. I know you guys were geeking out on the stats because if you think that in 2017 we only had 23,000 listens the entire year, so getting up to 2 million in a very short time, it's very, very. It gives us some satisfaction because, as you know, I keep on saying this is a labor of love. Okay, on to the show now. So I see some of the ambassadors. Big shout out to our ambassadors at large. So let me introduce you. The Mod Squad today is Julie, who is actually a neo. She has been incarnated as the Italian Wine Ambassador, New York edition. I met Julianne is her full name, Julianne Farricker. Is that correct? Is that the correct pronunciation?
Farricker, but
Farricker, sorry. Okay. You're so easygoing. And I met Julianne because I did kind of an Insta contest right on Instagram to give up some books away. And she was the first one to, I can't remember, to guess the grape.
Yes.
Was it? Yes.
Mm-hmm. It was a native grape.
Yes, and then we sent you the book. And I met Julianne actually on Instagram, go figure. And then she has since done the course in July in New York edition last year. And she's now our very own Italian wine ambassador. She's also the owner of Everything Italian. In fact, her owner of the wine shop is called the Italian Cellar. Is that correct?
Yes, the Italian Cellar.
Does that mean you only sell Italian wines?
Yes, we are 100% exclusively Italian.
And how many SKUs do you have, more or less?
So it really depends because, of course, we've been, hitting issues with supply chain right now. But our goal is to represent all 20 regions. So at different times we have, and it's just very interesting to keep up with our inventory. But we have represented all 20 regions at some point.
So, you're a very good student because also you're a very good teacher, right? What are you teaching?
So I am also in my 18th year as an English and history teacher for high school students.
Ooh, watch out. Okay.
Yes, so that's my day job.
So I hope to see you again very soon. Are you coming to Vinitaly?
Yes, I will be there.
Excellent. So I'll see you very, very soon. We're going back, by the way, we have another edition of Vinitaly International Academy in New York coming up in March, in a couple of weeks' time, actually. So if anybody wants to sign up, or I see some of the ambassadors there, if you want to refreshen up your Italian wine studies or want to become an expert, please get in touch with us, with Jacopo and Cynthia. I see Cynthia in the audience. You can reach out to them for additional information. So I always ask why you choose you have chosen your favorite producer. This time is Amanda Courtney. Why did you choose her to be your favorite producers to be interviewed today?
So it's interesting because I had read about Amanda a few years ago in Forbes magazine, because she also has a wine tourism company. Mm-hmm. And my business partners and I, we thought that the next time we traveled to Italy, which would have been May 2020, at that time, we thought that we would meet up with her and get to know more about, Piemonte. And of course, we know what happened in 2020, unfortunately. So we wanted to just make sure that we, met up with her again in the future. So then when we did finally meet up with her in October, so about 4 months ago, we traveled around Piemonte. We went to some Barolo producers, some Barbaresco producers. We were talking more about the native grapes. And for me, it was just interesting to see an American in the wine business there thriving. And, Amanda had such a passion about her region. And of course, as someone, my roots are in southern Italy. So it was just so great to see.
What part of southern Italy?
So my grandmother came from the island of Ischia, so Campania, and then my grandfather came from the island of
Not
Stromboli.
a bad place to be.
Yes, and then my grandfather was from Stromboli, the volcano.
Oh, so always an island.
Yes, Due Isole for me.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I have, this attraction to southern Italy, promoting southern Italy. So it was great to be in Piemonte and, get to have that firsthand view. So she was amazing to talk to. And so that's why I chose her for today.
Great, excellent. So we're all looking forward to that. So what are the learning objectives for today from your call with Amanda?
So it's interesting because when I had met with Amanda, it was about 3 months after the Vinitaly program. And of course, I had spent many months studying. I mean, every day I was studying my maps and my grapes. So when I first met with
Cheeto.
her,
Did you study with Cheeto?
yes.
Because I think everyone who studied with Cheeto became an ambassador. Amazing.
Yes,
amazing
our study group
tutor,
did
right?
very well. And so when I met with Amanda, you know, the first thing I wanted to ask her was about the native grapes of Piemonte. Besides Nebbiolo, we wanted to talk more about those lesser known grapes. So today, Amanda will be sharing some information with us about, you know, grapes that she deals with, especially with her wine business, Delinquent Vino, and, you know, how they're even focusing on some of those lesser known grapes from the Piemonte region.
So what is Delinquent Vino, and like how did you discover Delinquent Vino?
So I discovered through Amanda. So Amanda works with her husband. So she's a contadina with Delinquent Vino. And so as we were touring the Piemonte, you know, especially the Langhe region, she then introduced us to and told us the story of Delinquent Vino. And it has a really interesting backstory, even with the name. So
Yeah.
of course the English teacher in me is always like, let's decipher the words. So of course with Delinquent, you know, she'll talk about that and she'll explain that. And so at one point she said, well, would you like to try some of our wines? So, you know, of course, my business partners and I, you know, we just wanted to do everything. So we tried her Grignolino di Asti, I believe it was a 2020, and then the Monferrato DOC, which was a Nebbiolo-based wine, and it was a Superiore from 2019. And it was great. They were fresh wines, they were delicious. And again, you know, talking about Piemonte, it's such a powerhouse, but especially Grignolino, you know, bringing that to the forefront. And I hope Delinquent Vino gets to do that.
Okay, excellent. So this is the bit, I love my favorite bit, where I can just grab a glass of wine and then just relax and listen to you and your guests. So take it away, and I will come back towards the end if there's time for maybe take up some questions from our audience. Okay? Take it away, Julianne.
Perfect, thank you. And again, thank you to all our listeners. So I am Julie from the Italian Cellar. Sometimes to my Italian listeners, buonasera dalla cantina italiana, sono Giulia. And tonight I am here with Amanda Courtney. She is the owner of Amanda's Wine Adventures. She was born and raised in the United States, but currently lives and works in Italy, focusing most of her time in Barolo, Barbaresco, and the Etna wine regions. Levin?
Hello, how are you?
Yes, hi, how are you?
Doing good. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on today.
Yes, so it's so great to meet with you again, of course, online. So we met in October, but we had been talking before that. And so I know that you have, you know, quite an extensive CV in wine. You studied with your WSET diploma student, and you are certified with the Court of Master Sommeliers. Yeah. So I guess, of course, you know, when Stevie was asking about Delinquent Vino, I guess we'll go back to the roots. So what brought you to Italy?
What brought me to Italy, I came out to Italy in 2011, and what brought me here was the Nebbiolo. So I had an opportunity to work harvest in a winery in Barbaresco. And that's actually where I met my husband, because he is one of the winemaking team at this winery.
Yes, and your husband's name is?
Giovanni Albizano, but everybody calls him Gianni.
Yes, and so, funny story, I'm also married to a Giovanni, but my Giovanni's from Napoli. So, all right, and so you came here for Nebbiolo, and so tell us more about Delinquent Vino and the meaning of the wines, and especially the name.
Exactly. Delinquent started in 2018. So my husband, just like every other Italian family, or many of the families in this area, everyone basically owns property. They own land, because that's how, you know, once upon a time, everybody made their living. And Johnny grew up really close to his grandparents, who were grape growers, and they never made wine, his grandparents, but they sold the grapes to other wineries in the area to make their living. When his grandparents passed, they gave all the land, all the holdings to Johnny's uncle. And so, and his mother, just the house that she lives in today. Basically, his uncle is a mechanic, so really had no interest in having these land holdings. And when the time came that whoever was renting this land beforehand, when that rental agreement was going up, they ended up approaching us to see if we wanted to take over 1 hectare in Castagnole delle Lanze. And so really from there, Johnny was a little hesitant, I'm gonna be perfectly honest with you, because taking a huge risk like this was something that he really wasn't 100% on, but it was definitely me saying to him, look, you know, this has been in your family for we don't know how many generations, and it is, you know, a super memory of his grandparents. You know, he grew up alongside his grandfather, in particular in this vineyard here, because it's attached to his mother's house. And I said it would be a shame to see it go to someone else. And so that's kind of where Delinquent was born. Working with 1 hectare, as you can imagine, yes, it's very time consuming. There's a lot of producers who have a lot more hectare, but where we're just starting out, we do everything by hand. So that means that all of the labor that goes into this vineyard is all done by hand, including the treatments. So we made small investments. So we ended up purchasing a little teeny machine that we put on Johnny's back because it's way too heavy for me to carry myself. And so we'll be going through the vineyards to treat the vines with this machine that will spray them with the liquids. When we decided to do all of this, because, you know, about 90% of it goes back into his face, we said we want to work organically, and we want to work in a way that is less intrusive to the land and also in a healthier way for us, because we're the first ones. We're basically on the front line, so to say. And and so we decided to go in this way, working organically. It's interesting because our first year, 2018, it was absolutely gorgeous inside of our vineyard because it was so green. The grass came back, all the leaves of the vines grew up, and when you walked into our vineyard, you had a sense not so much of being in a vineyard, but being in a garden. And when all of these things were happening, because at the time we didn't have the name Delinquent, all of our neighbors would look at us as though we were crazy because we're cutting the grass with the weed whacker. We're doing all the treatments, you know, on a Sunday afternoon because that's when we can get out into the vineyards, and everyone around us thought we were nuts. So we wanted to have a name that represented us, but also represented the Piemontese dialect. And so delinquente is the Italian word for delinquent, which is also in English, but it's delinquent in Piemontese dialect. And so we wanted to be, since we are already kind of like in our neighborhood, the ones that are doing everything a little bit different from everyone else, we figured that delinquent was a great name for us to represent our company. And it also is the name that Johnny's grandfather used to call him when he was a child. So that's kind of where we decided to go with the name Delinquent.
I might have to use that one on my Giovanni.
Yeah, exactly.
Of course. And I like that you brought up the fact that you're honoring the Piemontese dialect, because I know that, you know, that's something I talk about with many of the customers of the Italian Cellar, because especially American customers or Italian American customers have probably a perspective of what Italy is. Mm-hmm. And then they seem to forget that Italy, you know, is 20 regions that have local languages, their own cuisine, their own culture. And of course, you know, with Delinquent Vino, you're honoring your local dialect even. Because I think even on one of the bottles, there was some of the dialect as well. It was like trying to say no joke, but in Piemontese, correct?
Scherzeneng, yes.
Yes.
For the Gringolino.
Yes, and so I appreciate that because, you know, especially as an English teacher, we talk about that all the time with root words and such. And, you know, of course, being married to a Neapolitan, you know, I've had to pick up some of the Neapolitan dialect as well. So I appreciate that with winemakers and, of course, you know, promoting these local languages, keeping them alive. So then going back to Piemonte and keeping to the roots, so tell us more about some of the native grapes that you're working with and why you feel that they're important to preserve.
So we work with 3 grapes. Delinquent was born with Nebbiolo, which, you know, Nebbiolo is a very important grape in the Langhe area. Barolo Barbaresco. Where we're located, this Nebbiolo vineyard has been planted in 2003. So it has quite a few years on it, and we're right on the border of Barbaresco. We actually share the same soil structure as Barbaresco from Neve. As we started to release, when we released the 2018, it was in 2020, and we wanted to try to do some experimentation with other native varietals, coming more from the heart of the Monferrato area, things that are lesser known, things that we felt we would try our best to bring them back to life. And so we started with Gringolino and Fresa, 2 indigenous grapes that have a very, very long history, that are very historical, and have a lot in common, believe it or not, with Nebbiolo. Gringolino was really important, especially in the 18th century under the House of Savoy, where they would put it in the same place in their cellar as the Barolo Barbaresco to age. So once upon a time, believe it or not, Gringolino had that same kind of, had that same position as, you know, the world famous Barolo that we have today. What happened in this area was from a lot of the mass tourism that came here in like the 70s, where looking at Gringolino, because of its color, because it's so light, people kind of associated it to a rosé. When you taste it and you feel the tannins that the Gringolino gives you, you say there's something wrong here. So the customers started asking for a lighter style Gringolino, something they could just, you know, drink and not worry about. I like to say something, they were asking for like a jungle juice, basically. And we decided when we wanted to start working with the Gringolino grape, we wanted to kind of go back to bringing the importance into Gringolino. And there is a consortium in Monferrato called Monferrace, where there's a select producers, about 10 producers who work with this grape, and they age it like they did once upon a time in oak. They treat it the same way that they treated it historically, of course, with today's modern technologies. And so our idea was kind of to play a little bit with the idea of the Monferrace, but to also make it a little bit less, I don't want to say less important because that's not really the right way to say it, but to make it not as big and bold as the Monferrace wines are, but we wanted something that has the guts to be able to drink now if you want, or even to lay it in the cellar for years to come. And that's what our Gringolino has portrayed. And going back to Piemontese dialect, we called this wine Scherzeneng because we wanted to put on the label to let people know that yes, this is a Gringolino, yes, it's a Gringolino from Asti, but it's no joke.
I love that. I appreciate that so much. Now, also, you do have the role of a Fiat Panda that will show up on on your wine labels as well. What can you tell us about that?
So the Fiat Panda.
You know, I love the Panda.
I mean, I know it is it is a spectacular vehicle. The Fiat Panda we purchased last year. It's a 1986 Panda, and we got it. Instead of purchasing a tractor, we decided we'd start off slowly with the Panda, with the 4x4, so we can take it into the vineyard with us to help us carry some of the tools up the hill when we need to. So the Panda was the newest addition to the family, let's say, and we decided to put it on the Gringolino label.
Yes, I love it. And that's the thing. To me, your label, besides, you know, using the term delinquent, using the Piemontese dialect, incorporating the Panda into it, to me, that's just, you know, it's such an Italian label, but of course, you know, honoring Piemonte. So I appreciate that. And now going back to your grapes, so of course, you know, many producers have to talk about, you know, climate change and the role that it's playing with its grapes. So how do you think climate change will affect your grapes in the region?
It's hard to say how they will affect the grapes in the region. I mean, let me just talk a little bit about what we're going through right now. We're going through a pretty crazy drought at the moment. And it seems weird, it's February, you know, we don't necessarily need rain, but we do need it to snow. And it only snowed once this year in the beginning of December. And since then we haven't seen nor one flake, nor one drop of water. So we're starting off this year a little bit nervous because last year the water count was about, I want to say 20%, 25% less than it is on average. So we're starting off on this year already with, you know, less water from last year and then no water so far this year. So we're a little nervous. Temperatures have been crazy. I'm sure it's the same for you guys. Where you are today, it was unbelievable. It was 20 degrees Celsius. I'm not 100% sure what that is in Fahrenheit, but we were outside in t-shirts, basically, and it's, you know, the middle of February, so it's really quite crazy how weird the weather has been. The climate change in general for this area, and I'm going to just kind of talk a little bit more of it as a generalization for Piedmont, what I've noticed, especially in the 10 years I've been here, but talking to a lot of the producers, you know, for us, the huge changing point was the year 2000 when things really started to heat up. And I'm going to be honest, for the Nebbiolo, it's been great. You know, I mean, yes, we have all these new technologies in the cellar. Yes, we're working differently in the vineyards. And there's all these different ways that we can go about, you know, gaining the perfect ripeness that we're looking for. But it's also helped a lot that we have a lot more days of sunlight, a lot more hours of sunlight. And so really, I mean, if you think about it, if you look back to like 1996 until today, we can really only take out maybe, you know, one vintage, 2002, where a lot of people didn't produce wine because of the hail damage and because there was so much water. You have 2003, which was a very, very hot vintage, but that had a lot to do also with the previous year, 2002, having so much damage and then having such a hot year in 2003 and how the phenolics ripened. Other than that, I mean, we've had all pretty decent, you know, enjoyable, beautiful years. I mean, you have 2010, 2016, you have 2013, 2012. So in terms of right now, I want to say, I mean, yes, it's not the ideal condition because we should be having, you know, proper winters. We should be expecting a lot more water throughout the year. But in terms of producing wine, especially Nebbiolo, I feel like everyone is quite happy right now. What's going to happen in the next 10 years? It probably will be too warm. And talking to a lot of producers in this area, a lot of people are saying, you know, once upon a time you would always want to plant your vineyards in the south or the west facing where it had the most amount of sun. And so even today, all the best plots of land in Barolo or Barbaresco are planted with Nebbiolo for that reason. But there's a lot of people now starting to experiment more eastern facing, or even though you're not supposed to for Barolo, which they don't put it in the Barolo, but even the northern facing vineyards, they say for their Langhe Nebbiolo, they're really happy with the outcome, even in a north facing area for Nebbiolo, because it gets the right amount of sun. They end up being fresher than the ones coming from the south. So we're going to have to see what happens in the next 10 years. But if we continue in this direction, it might be not so much in our favor.
Right. It's interesting because I live in Florida. And of course, you know, Florida, we've had more extreme summers. And then I know from spending time in Italy in the summer that my goal is usually to always return back to Florida by mid-July. Because of course, at least in Florida, air conditioning is ubiquitous, so I can find it everywhere. Whereas in Italy, not so much.
Exactly.
But I was in Rome last month, and the temperatures were all over the place. And there was one day I was walking around, and finally, as you mentioned, how you were in a t-shirt earlier, I was in a t-shirt as well, and I was, I made the mistake of walking down Via Nazionale, and every single person stared at me. You know, I didn't have my puffer jacket on, I didn't have a scarf, I just had a t-shirt. But I know that, climate change, it is an issue. So like you said, we just have to wait and see. It'll affect harvest times, it'll affect the grapes, but, we just have to wait with that. And then of course, I'm sorry.
There's also another thing to all this climate change that I'm noticing. I mean, there's now a denomination called Alta Langa, where before in the Alta Langa, the high Langhe, it was too cold to grow grapes, and now everyone is planting vineyards there because the temperature is better for the grapes. Yes, they're planting Pinot Noir and Chardonnay to make sparkling wines, and some people are actually planting Riesling and other international varietals there as well, but it seems that a lot of the producers are looking towards those higher altitude areas to then plant grapes.
Oh, that's a good point. And that's interesting to see how the Italian wine industry will change with climate change, because as you mentioned, they would have to adapt to the grapes that will be producing in the future. So, what we study now might be a little different in the future. Yeah. So then speaking of the region that you're in, and of course, because you're focusing on some of the lower lesser known grapes, which is, important to, bring them back to the forefront. Have you found it to be difficult to navigate wine among the powerhouses of Barolo and Barbaresco?
No, I don't really find, Barolo and Barbaresco are two absolutely amazing wine regions with a very, very long history. And for us, we're in an area completely different. The different grapes, the different soils, the different terrain, it needs time, I think, the Monferrato area. And I think, in time, and also if the wineries start to work more together in the Monferrato area, it can be another great region, just like Barolo and Barbaresco.
Yes, of course. And that's, I believe, with delinquent vino, it's bringing that back to the forefront. And I would say, too, that's like what we do with the Italian Cellar. It's maybe, yes, of course, we have the important wines, Barolo, Barbaresco, Brunello, but there are other wines in Italy, to especially try and, enjoy as well. So and this is where education comes in.
Exactly.
Educating about the native grapes, and even if they are the lesser known ones, but giving them a chance. So that's great.
I agree totally. And I'm taking the bull by the horns on working in Monferrato in the sense that, I have faith that this region will do fantastic. And I have faith that there's room for everybody. Everyone here, there's so many great producers and small producers in Piedmont that it just needs time. There's room for everyone. And it'll definitely, eventually take off, I think.
So then, talking about your wines, because I can't help but think about food and wine pairings. So what would be some of your ideal pairings with your wines?
With our wines, this is a good question. Well, the Gringolino goes good with everything. Usually it's the bottle that's finished before the tasting is over. So Gringolino is great for everything. Everyone in the area has been enjoying it more so as like an aperitivo because especially in the summertime, they've put it on ice, they chilled it down a little bit, and then just enjoyed it, on those warm summer evenings outside with some salami, some grissini,
Ooh.
Exactly.
I'm sorry, I just had a daydream about that. Picturing that summer wines, because that's, summer's around the corner. It'll be here before we know it, so I'll have to remember that. Perfect.
I think we even put a bottle with our turkey dinner for Thanksgiving this year, which paired perfectly. But also, the Nebbiolo, for example, goes really good with any kind of like meat dish. If you were to do maybe beef on the grill, like a nice steak, the Nebbiolo would be great there. Also, if you want something a little bit easier, just a nice pasta dish. We have here our typical ravioli di plin or the agnolotti, which are usually filled with different meats, and so or cingale, which is always delicious with the Nebbiolo, or something typical to the region of Asti, Monferrato, and that's donkey.
Yes. It's funny because I am someone who, of course, I appreciate all cuisine. And I remember when the first time I had donkey, might have been, I think it was actually in Verona a few years ago. And I thought, well, when in Rome or when in Verona.
Yes,
so I made sure to have it. But that was when being in southern Italy and I had to get used to eating rabbit.
Yes.
And because to me, I just kept thinking of Thumper, from, I was like, no, I can't do this, but I need to do this to deal with my mother-in-law. So that's an interesting pairing.
And then for the Fresa, this is not typical Piemontese pairing, but it's my favorite pairing for the Fresa, a nice hamburger. Hamburger with some bacon and some gorgonzola cheese with the Fresa is perfect.
Oh, okay. So I'm taking notes because I'm going to try that the next time.
Yes.
I'm drinking these wines.
The next time you're out, the Fresa is ready. We just labeled it this week. So the next time you're out, we're going to taste it.
Yes, and that's not too far away.
Yes,
and
I know.
And that's what's interesting about as well, because I know that, when I was talking with you in October and telling us about your winemaking. So can you tell us more about your perspective about women in winemaking? Maybe just not in Piemonte even, just your perspective about women in winemaking in general.
We're taking over.
Yes.
I have to say, so even in Piedmont, all the Barolo producers, like you look at the Barolo boys, okay, and they called it Barolo boys, and it was, Domenico Clerico, it was Giorgio Rivetti, it was Elio Altari, and then you had Chiara Boschi's the only woman in between all these guys, right? All of them had daughters. So you have Silvia, who's taken over Elio Altari. Domenico had the Cristina. Who else? You have the Rinaldi daughters who have taken over for Beppe Rinaldi, et cetera, et cetera. You have everyone had women and they're taking over the wine world. We're basically, we're taking over here. I think it's great. There's a lot of support. There's a lot of collaboration. Like women work really well together. I also really, just from tasting over the years and knowing the wines for so long, I really like seeing the evolution when a woman takes over the winery. It starts to become a little bit more, I find even though you're the winemaker, your job is to kind of, shepherd the wine into bottle, basically. Everyone's hand is different, and everyone has a different style, and everyone has a different idea. And I notice when women take over in the cellar, things tend to become a little bit more elegant, okay? A little bit more generous, a little bit more, giving. And so it's been really beautiful to see all these women winemakers, taking over their family vineyards and making things really incredible.
Yes, and that's very important that you brought that up about how these winemakers do have daughters. So
Yeah.
of course, naturally, their role will be in winemaking. So now, when we talk about your wine tours, because of course I had, visited with you in Piemonte, but I noticed that you also offer them in Sicilia and Basilicata and Puglia.
Yes.
So can you tell us why these regions?
Because I love them. So
That was probably obvious.
It's all started off in Sicily. I love the whole island of Sicily. I love the history and the architecture and the grapes and the people and the food, and I can go on and on and on. And from there, it kind of became almost like an obsession. I would go down, twice a year, 3 times, because for us it's easy. It's a 45-minute plane ride from Torino, it's a piece of cake. And I started, besides the fact that I love the wine, but I started visiting more producers, going to more tastings that they would offer on the island and getting to know everything better. And just from word of mouth, from my clients on my wine tours, I said to a few people, I'd like to start doing more tours in Sicily. If you guys are interested to come, we can plan a couple days, et cetera, et cetera. And I've actually had quite a few people write me, to book them like 5, 6, 7 day wine tour with me on the island. And they worked fantastic. And so since then, slowly I started, building itineraries, because ideally to go down in a small group is fantastic. I had my first small group wine tour last year in November in Piedmont, and it was amazing. And I'm going to tell you why, because it gives me the possibility to do so many more things and to show people, really into the lives of the people of that area that I wouldn't necessarily be able to do with just 2 or 4 people, if that makes sense. It also gives me more time to plan more things. So we had a dinner in a wine cellar. We had a really spectacular truffle hunt. And with all of these beautiful events, a lot of times people will stop and have a meal with us. So we have all these winemakers come out to lunch with us and to dinner. And just the people that we've met along the way would enjoy our company. And it was really an absolutely beautiful, fun time. So from that I said to myself, I would love to do this in Puglia. And so Matera in Puglia, because they're so close together. And Matera is such an absolutely gorgeous city with a really crazy history. to blend them together, because then when you go to Matera, you are so close to Altamura, which is famous for probably some of the best bread on the planet. And there's a couple really crazy characters in Altamura who make mozzarella and burrata, and they're just an absolute blast to hang out with. From there, you know, going towards the coast of Puglia, you have all of these beautiful towns like Locorotondo, Ostuni, Alberobello, to go and see the Trulli. That I said, why not? Let's do it. Let's try to organize some trips to different regions to make it interesting, to also be able to give more options to people who have already toured with me, that they understand, you know, that I'm really passionate about the wines of Italy, but also the history, the culture, and the people. And so that's kind of where all of these different tours have started out. Maybe one day I'll do Calabria. That's on my list as well.
And it's interesting because of meeting with customers, you know, they'll usually talk to me about different wines, and then they'll tell me about where their grandparents might have, you know, emigrated from. And when it's usually, of course, it's southern Italy. So I'll talk to them, you know, the map is always very important for me. I love my maps. And we'll talk about southern Italy, and especially Sicilia. There are so many with the roots in Sicilia. And it's so fascinating to share with them, like, you know, how diverse the culture is, because, of course, let's think of the occupants. We had the Romans, we had the Greeks, we had the Carthaginians, we had the Phoenicians. So, you know, it's incorporating that history lesson into explaining why we have, you know, certain grapes. Of course, you know, we could talk about Zebibo, how that had migrated to Sicily, but also just even the cuisine, the role of eggplant, the role of citrus. And that's what I love about Italy, is that it's just 20 diverse regions. We could say 21 because sometimes Alto Adige is, you know, on its own, but that's what makes it beautiful. And the more people get to know Italy, wine automatically is included, because, you know, you can't think about Italian cuisine without wine. And so it's really, you know, showcasing the best of Italy through its wines and its cuisine and its culture. And it's great that you're starting to do that in those southern regions. So, you know, of course, you know, as a history teacher, my students know when we get to the chapter, of course, about Italian, you know, unification or anything about the Renaissance, that they can't get any questions wrong. They have to be 100%. There's no excuse when it comes to Italy.
Exactly.
Like, this is her chapter. We can't really, you know, get anything wrong. But that's the beauty of Italy. It's just so diverse. So Then when we're talking about other Italian wines, so, you know, we talk about wines from Piemonte, what are some of your other, I won't say favorite because that could cause, you know, maybe some arguments. We don't want that. But any of your other preferred wines from other regions that don't have the spotlight?
I'm always going to go to Sicily for that next region. I mean, Etna Rosso has so much in common, I find, with Nebbiolo. There is a lot of similarities to Nero Mascalese and Nebbiolo. But if we want something completely different, I have a soft spot for Marsala.
Really?
And I think, yeah, and it's amazing because it's, again, another one of like those underdog wines that nobody really thinks about. The last time I was in Sicily, a girlfriend of mine, we drove all the way across the island to Marsala to visit wineries, and we were just blown away, completely blown away. It was spectacular.
That's right, because of course in the United States, usually people just think of it as the cooking wine.
Exactly.
I know that's what I remember having it on the counter, my mother using it as the cooking wine. So of course that's all I thought about, of course, you know, until I had studied more. So for myself though, I would even focus on Sicilia as well, because I know with the Italian Cellar, we've been educating about Sicily and Sicilia. Well, you know, it's funny because the other day I was doing an Italian wine tasting, and I kept referring to Sicilia. And some of the customers said, wait, what is Sicilia? And I had to say, oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I'll refer to it as Sicily. So sometimes I go back and forth. But I, of course, am a huge fan of Frappato, and then even the Zebibo Secco, so a dry Zebibo. And when I was in Sicily in October, I was trying to pair, you know, a Frappato and a Zebibo with each of my meals. And that was very easy to do. I also love the island of Sicily, as I've mentioned, but it's interesting because when I watch shows, because I'm a huge fan of watching my Italian, detective shows, and Commissario Montalbano, who's my ultimate, he's my favorite, he always would be having his lunch and pairing it with Inzolia. So when I'd watch the episodes, I would pause, just so I could zoom in and check out what he was drinking. And so his character was a fan of Inzolia. So there are so many wines. I even think more, going back to Campagna, Fiano di Avellino, the elegant and has the finesse. But, it's starting, I think, to have more of a showcase here in the United States. I can find it at other local stores. But it's just, for me, it's, you'd like to try something, a different type of white wine. Are you having, you're appreciating your seafood? Let's try some Fiano di Avellino. So I'm trying my best, educating about some of our other ones. I totally agree also
with the Fiano as an absolutely spectacular white.
Mm-hmm. And that's how, I always remember Fiano Fino, like it's the fine, finesse.
Exactly. And if you age it for a few years, it's a bomba totale. Absolutely spectacular. Yeah.
I'll have to do that. I have a Taurasi from 2007. So it's 2022, so it's 15 years. Yeah. And of course in Florida, we have different conditions here. Room temperature is very different here than it would be in Piemonte. And so I'm thinking this is the year that I will be opening that Taurasi. And we'll see what adventure awaits me there. But there are just so many Italian wines, and it's hard to just, pinpoint. But again, as I've mentioned before, with more education, more people will be drinking them. All right, so then, even to maybe divert from Italy, so if you had to choose another winemaking region outside Italy, which one?
I would be going to Willamette Valley.
Oh, do tell.
Well, to be honest, before coming to Piedmont, I was living in Los Angeles, in California. I was studying and working in wine, et cetera, and I'd always wanted to go to Oregon. And I ended up spending a summer there, and I fell in love. And I said, I'm gonna go to Piedmont, and when I come back, I'm moving to Oregon. And I never made it back to Oregon. But that's why I would definitely want to work in Oregon for sure. Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, super.
All right, so then that's a natural question then. So do you envision staying in Italy indefinitely?
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm. I'm basically rooted here now, literally. So, I mean, it actually hasn't even crossed our minds, nor have we ever discussed it in the 11 years I've been here to move to the United States. Mm-hmm. I don't know, as soon as I got here, as soon as I was, settled here, I felt like this was home. So even with all of its quirks,
I was about to say,
the first thing I learned moving to Italy was the art of patience. Yes. So I consider myself much calmer than I've ever been in my entire life. And I like the pace of life here. Our family that we have here, all of our dear friends. It's just, I really feel lucky because I was definitely welcomed by the native people with open arms, which I understand like a lot of other expats who live here, they have a hard time kind of fitting in. And so I feel really, really lucky to have met some really amazing people in my time here.
So that's great.
No going back home. Sorry, guys. I'll just come for vacation.
Yes. So as I go back and forth, eventually, I always said one time I won't get back on the plane and I'll stay in Italy forever. But we'll see when that happens. I still have some more teaching to do. But we know bureaucratic issues and all, Italy is our future. So, all right. And then again, focusing on our beloved Italia. So what would you think is one of the most important contributions from Italy to the wine world?
This is a good question. I mean, Italy, for me, is, let's go back a minute. France is always kind of like the start. Everyone always looks to France in the wine world. And then you drink French, you drink American wines, especially if you're coming from the US, and then you start branching off and you go to Spain, you go to Italy, you go to Germany, you go to Austria, et cetera, et cetera. Italy's a little wild. It's just like, you know, how we were chit-chatting before. Italy is a place, the wines coming from Italy are just always exciting. There's always something super, you know, giving and a great story to tell, and a regional difference, or even, you know, a microscopic difference in every single wine coming from every single vineyard. That it's just a place, it's a wine region you just can't get bored of, you know?
I agree 100%. And, you know, as I talk with even customers, I would tell them that, you know, as much as I've been drinking Italian wines and exploring Italy, I've been fortunate to visit all 20 regions. There's just so much more for me to learn. So I look forward to doing that. And of course, I look forward to seeing you again, Amanda, and working with you. And you know, again, thank you so much for even, you know, answering our questions today. You've given us such a great little insight into Piemonte.
I would love to say thank you also for having me. It's been great to catch up again a minute, and I look forward to seeing you later on this year.
Yes. All right. So, Stevie, do we have any questions?
I always like to do that. That's one of my other favorite parts too. Yeah, so if you guys, we have a few more minutes left. If you'd like to come up and ask a question, please raise your hand and we will bring you onto the stage. In the meantime, I would like to just remind everyone the next Clubhouse calls coming up. Like I had said, that next week, we're usually 6 p.m. now, which is a good slot for us. Ashley Howell with Pierluca Proietti. Then we have Vittoria Cecce. She's a funny one. She's called Slutty Spaghetti, her handle. She'll be interviewing Michael Schmelzer from Monte Benardi. And then we have Fanny. I just saw Fanny at Wine Paris yesterday, actually. Fanny Bruel will be interviewing Federico Giuntini from Salvapiana. Then we have Wayne Young. He'll be interviewing the Rapuzzi brothers. And then March 24th, we have Tomasella Perniciaro interviewing Mariolina Baccellieri. We have Emilia Marnig, and she'll be interviewing Ivan Giuliani from Terenzuola. Then we have Erin De Mara. He'll be interviewing Alessandro Gallo. And I see Kevin. Kevin's in the audience, or he was. Oh, I still see him. He's the dude with the hat and sunglasses. Kevin De Lucente will be interviewing Colombera and Garella from Alto Piemonte, and so on and so forth. So this will be continuing for some time. I think we do have a hiatus during the Vinitaly Marathon. Is that correct, Laika?
Yeah, that's correct. We're
Yes.
going to try to do some double recordings for the end of March, but we'll see.
Okay, very good. Okay. Laika, I know usually you have a question. Have you got a question for our guest
Yeah.
tonight? Either Julie or Amanda?
Yeah, but first of all, Julie, I really want to thank you for saying something about this Italian show that you're watching. I'm also gonna watch that for sure. It's really entertaining. I love the conversation. So there's something about I'm curious about, because I've studied wine tourism and haven't really gotten into Italian wine tourism. Since it's something that you're doing, Amanda, I wanted to ask, like, what is it that you've seen? I mean, based on your experience in wine tourism in Italy, what is it that you've seen that you could actually create an innovation from? I mean, from the existing wine tourisms there are in Italy.
Something to create that, first off, if we were able to create a little bit more organization, that would be fantastic. In this region, in Italy as a whole, I think that if we were able to organize everything in one area, especially with, like, there's so much things happening simultaneously at all times, festivals, concerts, great restaurants and things to do and places to see and visit and wineries, and or even like they do a lot of like open days in the wineries, and if it was more information that was easily available for, you know, tourists or travelers coming into this area, it would be, I think, even better for everyone involved.
Okay. Amanda, can I just do a follow-up on the wine tourism question there? Can you recommend some books, some textbooks on wine tourism in general? Not necessarily Italy, but have you run into any wine tourism books that you can recommend?
Wine tourism books, not off the top of my head, to believe it or not, for other regions. I mean, other than if you were to look at the guidebooks like Gambaro Rosso, for example, but that's not really in the essence of tourism, but it's...
I mean, there are some articles out there, but of course, you know, Donatella Cinelli Colombini with Dario Stefano, who's the senator, they wrote a book on wine tourism. Like half of it is from the legal perspective, the other half is almost like a how-to book. That's in Italian. But I was just wondering if there were other books that we can look into. But that's okay.
For just specific wine tourism, I'm afraid I don't have that answer.
Yeah, I wonder why. Because actually we were having this discussion in Paris. So I was just kind of curious. All right, you folks, I'm going to close up the room unless there is a dire question. So that is all for now. Thank you so much, Julie and Amanda, for joining us. We really enjoyed the conversation. It was so smooth and the connectivity was so excellent. No problems there. So until next time, thanks again, everyone. And a huge shout out to our ambassadors, our mod squad. I see Cynthia, Paul, Melissa, Giuseppe, Kevin, Tushaw, Fermented Boss, of course, Jody. Congratulations on your new job, Andre, Justine, Franca, Marzia, and Ciro, the favorite tutor of the VIA class, and everyone else for that matter. So, ciao ragazzi!
Ciao.
Ciao, thank you so much. Buonasera. Buona serata.
Once again, here we go. Swirl.
Listen to the Italian Wine Podcast wherever you get your podcasts. We're on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Himalaya FM, and more. Don't forget to subscribe and rate the show. If you enjoy listening, please consider donating through ItalianWinePodcast.com. Any amount helps cover equipment, production, and publication costs. Until next time, cin cin.
Guys, I'm Joy Livingston and I am the producer of the Italian Wine Podcast. Thank you for listening. We are the only wine podcast that has been doing a daily show since the pandemic began. This is a labor of love and we are committed to bringing you free content every day. Of course, this takes time and effort, not to mention the cost of equipment, production, and editing. We would be grateful for your donations, suggestions, requests, and ideas. For more information on how to get in touch, go to ItalianWinePodcast.com.